It was January 1942. American roads were soon to go silent, not because fuel had run dry or highways were destroyed, but because Detroit, the glittering factory city nicknamed the Arsenal of Democracy, had done the unthinkable. For the first time in U.S. history, every single car company stopped making cars. Not one. For 1 to 1,000 days, no American civilian could purchase a new automobile. Not a Ford, not a Chrysler, not even a Chevy. Why? Because the fate of the free world depended on it. This wasn't just a production change, it was a radical reinvention of a nation at war. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, shattered any illusions of American neutrality. In a single morning, the United States was thrust into a global conflict that was already consuming Europe, Asia, and Africa. President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared war. Congress answered with thunderous approval, and within days, America faced an urgent, almost impossible question. How could an economy built around consumer goods and peacetime comforts be retooled to match the Axis powers' war machines? The problem wasn't just about tanks and planes. It was scale, industrial, human, and moral. Factories used to building plush sedans and gleaming convertibles would now need to mass-produce bombers, armor-plated vehicles, and artillery. The stakes were absolute: win the production war, or lose the real one. The auto industry didn't volunteer for this transformation. It was conscripted. On January 1, 1942, the U.S. government issued an outright ban on the production of civilian vehicles. Within weeks, mighty corporations like General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler were forced to clear their assembly lines. Projects years in development were canceled overnight. Car dealerships shifted to selling used models, or simply waited out the drought. The Office of Production Management, and later the War Production Board, coordinated a seismic shift. These governing bodies didn't just reassign tasks, they rewired the very logic of manufacturing. Blueprints for Buicks became blueprints for tanks. Engine blocks once romanced as horsepower symbols now roared as instruments of war. One such artifact of this transition was Ford's Willow Run plant, an automotive facility reimagined into the world's first mass production site for B-24 Liberator bombers. From the bolts to the bomb bays, every element of design and labor had to be unlearned, then relearned, and fast. This was not just a retooling of machines, it was a retooling of minds. One of the most staggering redeployments came from Chrysler, which was tasked with building tanks, specifically the formidable M4 Sherman. Nicknamed the Detroit Tank Arsenal, its facility in Warren, Michigan, became one of the most critical centers of armored vehicle production in U.S. history. But Chrysler wasn't alone in facing an uphill climb. Its engineers had never built anything close to a tank before. They had to decipher British blueprints, reimagine tooling systems, and convert car chassis lines into platforms capable of handling 30-ton armored behemoths. The familiar dance of chrome and upholstery gave way to hardened steel and turret rotation mechanisms. Retooling wasn't glamorous, it was chaotic. Engineers worked double shifts, welding sparks flew through the night, and workers, many with no industrial background, were trained on the spot. It was a crash course in wartime engineering, driven less by elegance than by urgency. Mistakes were many: flawed castings, misaligned gun mounts, and unreliable early transmissions. But every failure was met with iteration, a relentless pursuit of production rhythm. In just over a year, Chrysler transformed from a company known for refinement to a war machine builder churning out 5 Shermans an hour. The speed was breathtaking, but the cost was more than material. It meant trading American luxury for American survival, line by line, bolt by bolt. At Ford, the pivot was even more audacious. Under the leadership of Edsel Ford and production wizard Charles Sorensen, the company embarked on what many believed was an impossible mission: to mass-produce heavy bombers using the same assembly line principles that had revolutionized the automobile. The Willow Run plant, sprawling over 3.5 million square feet, was the embodiment of this vision. Up to this point, aircraft were built slowly and by hand, crafted like fine furniture. But Ford applied conveyor belts, part standardization, and time-motion discipline to the skybound behemoths. By mid-1944, Willow Run was producing one B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. These four-engine Leviathans were critical to the Allied bombing campaigns across Europe. However, the transition was anything but smooth. Initial models suffered from dismal quality rates, with many aircraft requiring post-assembly rework. Coordination between thousands of subcontractors proved maddening. Wiring often didn't match, hydraulics leaked, and engines occasionally failed under stress. Yet Ford's workforce, including thousands of women and minorities, newly invited into factory roles, persevered. What began as chaos slowly resolved into order, a mechanical harmony born from sheer repetition and stubbornness. In the shadow of failure, a new American confidence was forged, not just with steel, but with grit and grease and sleepless nights. But not every transformation ran smoothly, and not every factory found its rhythm. Take the example of General Motors' Fisher Body Division, once a premier name in crafting sleek car exteriors. When redirected to aircraft fuselage and gun turret production, the company quickly hit a wall. The tolerances required for aviation were far narrower than anything in automotive work. Sheet metal that passed inspection for a Cadillac would buckle dangerously in a high-altitude bomber. Assemblers trained in ornamental details now faced the unforgiving demands of structural integrity and aerodynamics. Miscalculations led to costly recalibrations. Meanwhile, the infamous M3 submachine gun, commissioned for speed of production rather than engineering precision, suffered from jamming and inaccuracy in combat. Nicknamed the grease gun for its crude appearance, it embodied both the promise and peril of American improvisation. What emerged from this period wasn't perfection, it was determination. American factories, once temples to leisure and affluence, had become crucibles of necessity. Their engineers weren't just solving design problems, they were reshaping the very concept of what an industrial society could do when forced to bet it all on victory. This industrial metamorphosis created what many historians now call America's Second Front, not in blood-soaked fields, but in the echoing caverns of steel mills, stamping plants, and hangars. Yet even these heroic efforts were not immune to failure or consequence. As resources shifted almost entirely to war material, domestic consumers paid the price. By 1943, American civilians faced severe shortages not just of cars, but of basic components like tires, batteries, and even replacement parts. Automobiles already on the road were repaired endlessly, sometimes cannibalized from parked wrecks. Rationing defined daily life. Those old Buicks and Dodges became lifelines, kept alive through ingenuity and salvage. Meanwhile, labor unrest simmered beneath the surface. Strikes flared, materials were rationed unpredictably, and plant accidents sometimes claimed more lives than battlefield skirmishes. But through it all, the factories endured with a singular objective: to supply the Allied war machine faster and better than the enemy could react. When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, the auto lines returned, but America was not the same. The industry had tasted total mobilization, realized its terrifying scale, and emerged with new purpose and new responsibility. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. The legacy of those 1,000 days rippled far beyond the confines of the Second World War. In the post-war years, veterans of the wartime industry didn't just return to their old jobs, they reimagined them. The lessons learned at Willow Run and the tank arsenal shaped modern manufacturing philosophies: just-in-time delivery, modular assembly, and systems integration. Labor unions gained leverage from their wartime indispensability, helping secure better wages and working conditions. Racial and gender barriers, while not erased, had been irreversibly challenged by wartime necessity. The Great Car Pause of 1942 to 1945 was not merely a production hiatus, it was a strategic pivot that redefined what a modern democracy could do under pressure. America did not win the war through firepower alone. It won it by transforming comfort into capability and vanity into velocity. with every torpedo plane, every tank tread, every screw turned by a hastily trained hand. A new definition of industrial courage was forged. That notion that freedom could be engineered remains one of the most audacious and enduring ideas born from the ashes of global conflict. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. And yet, perhaps the most overlooked consequence of this industrial upheaval was psychological. For nearly 3 years, Americans lived without new cars not because they couldn't afford them, but because the country had collectively chosen sacrifice over self-indulgence. The absence of the automobile, that symbol of independence and prosperity, became a quiet placeholder for shared purpose. In newspaper ads and radio broadcasts, the message was clear: you ride with Hitler if you ride alone. Public transit usage soared, carpooling became patriotic, and every pothole-rattling journey in an aging vehicle transformed into a reaffirmation of unity. Children grew up without ever seeing a shiny new model. Teenagers learned to drive behind the wheel of pre-war relics. This was more than transportation. It was a suspension of normalcy, willingly embraced by a nation determined to win not just battles, but the right to return to a life worth living. In the end, it was not the roar of a Sherman or the flight path of a liberator that symbolized America's wartime transformation. It was the silence in the showrooms, the empty lots where shiny sedans once stood, and the knowledge that those missing cars had, in effect, driven democracy forward across distant shores. This strategic silence in car production ultimately echoed into the Cold War and beyond, serving as both a cautionary tale and a playbook. When future conflicts loomed, or when global markets trembled, government officials and corporate leaders alike often looked back to the wartime auto halt as a masterclass in industrial agility. It taught that peacetime abundance could be converted into wartime resilience, that a sprawling consumer economy held within it the bones of a war machine. But it also warned of the cost economic dislocation, social strain, and the difficult return to normalcy. As American factories once again filled with chrome and comfort in the late 1940s, the lessons of those 1,000 empty days remained etched into the concrete floors and calloused hands of those who bore their weight. They had proven that ingenuity, when hitched to collective will, could shift history's momentum, and while tanks would rust and bombers decay, the idea that a nation's soul could be measured in what it was willing to stop building would endure. War isn't just fought with bullets. It's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Looking back, the decision to halt car production stands as an unprecedented fusion of politics, engineering, and national character. It was, in essence, a calculated pause, one that prioritized a vision greater than profit margins or quarterly reports. The logistical headache of shuttering assembly lines, rerouting supply chains, and retraining millions was only possible because the stakes were existential. And unlike authoritarian regimes that conscripted industry through force, America achieved this pivot through a fusion of persuasion, policy, and patriotism. Business leaders were not merely coerced, but enlisted in a national cause. Workers were not automatons, but participants in a moral economy where each rivet and weld symbolized defiance against tyranny. This synergy between government and industry, combative yet collaborative, became a uniquely American formula that the world would try, and often fail, to replicate for decades to come. The absence of chrome on highways became the presence of steel in Normandy, the Pacific, and North Africa. And in that alchemy of sacrifice and speed, America discovered not just how to win a war, but how to reinvent itself. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Perhaps most revealing is what this pause taught America about its own capacity for change. In a democracy so often defined by consumption and individualism, the wartime halt in auto production served as a rare moment of collective restraint. Consumer desires were subordinated to a singular national mission, and in doing so, the country discovered an untapped well of discipline and purpose. This shared austerity became a proving ground, not only for mechanical prowess, but for civic maturity. It blurred the lines between citizen and soldier, between factory and frontline, from the drafting table to the lathe, from ration books to gasoline stamps. Every cog in the American experience turned toward victory. And when the factories finally wheezed back to civilian life, they did not just resume operations, they carried forward a deeper understanding of their place in the Republic. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In retrospect, the decision to suspend the production of civilian automobiles for 1,000 days was not merely an act of logistical necessity. It was a moral gamble on the resilience of democracy. Experts might point to charts of tonnage shipped or sorties flown, but the deeper value lay in how a generation internalized the notion that consumer convenience could be sidelined for global stakes. This wasn't a surrender of progress, but a redirection of it. Engineers learned to think at scale, executives discovered the utility of humility, and citizens, in their patience and sacrifice, redefined patriotism far beyond flag-waving. In classrooms and boardrooms, in assembly lines and kitchen tables, that era became a template for what a people can achieve when united not only by fear or force, but by purpose. Today, amidst calls for innovation and collective action in the face of new global crises, there is something to be mined from those silent auto plants and the ghost lines that once hummed with obligation. The wisdom they left behind is etched not just in history books, but in the very infrastructure of the modern world. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. From the ashes of that industrial gamble rose something larger than military victory. It created a blueprint for resilience in times of national peril. The Great Car Pause, as some would later call it, became a parable told in economics classes, military academies, and policy circles. It proved that even the most entrenched supply chains could be reoriented, that luxury-driven industries could surrender comfort in favor of cause, and that democracy could flex with the same intensity as any command economy without sacrificing its soul. In a century defined by speed, the act of stopping became revolutionary. American factories learned to pivot because they had to, and in doing so, they became the engine room of not just a war, but of a newly defined American identity, resilient, adaptive, and bound by a sense of purpose greater than profit margins. The silence of new car showrooms marked a louder idea: that national strength lies not only in what we build, but in what we are willing to stop building to protect what matters most. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. In today's hyper-connected world, the notion of voluntarily halting a major industry for a higher cause may sound radical, even implausible. Yet the 1,000-day shutdown of American car production during World War II remains a testament not just to capacity, but to conviction. It starkly contrasts with contemporary perceptions of wartime effort, which often lean on drones and digital warfare. Back then, it was pistons, steel presses, and human labor, millions of hands building not just machinery, but momentum. It reminds us that real national strength comes not from technological marvels alone, but from the willingness of a free people to act with unity, discipline, and foresight. That the automobile, a pinnacle of personal freedom, could be shelved in favor of collective resolve is perhaps one of the most powerful statements democracy has ever made on the world stage. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. And so, what began as a wartime improvisation emerged as a permanent feature of American strategic thinking. The echoes of that carless interregnum still shape how industries and governments envision emergency response, climate action, and economic resilience. It showed that industry could be nimble, citizens could be selfless, and that sacrifice could be repackaged as strategy, not just sentiment. Across the decades, when future generations have claimed that change is too hard, that markets cannot pause, or that people will not accept collective restraint, the story of those 1,000 silent days stands ready to answer. It is a blueprint not only etched in the archives of war, but whispered in the hum of every assembly line that knows it might, one day, have to stop in order to truly move forward. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Indeed, the memory of those factory floors, silenced from chrome but roaring with purpose, still lingers in the ethos of American innovation. The shutdown of civilian car production was not a pause in prosperity, but a pivot toward unity, proof that democracy could move with urgency when its survival was on the line. Those 1,000 days are a reminder that the true engine of a nation is not just its industry, but its intent. That sacrifice, when rooted in shared resolve, can become a force multiplier greater than steel or strategy. This story, sealed in faded photographs and worn machinery, is still speaking to us, urging a modern world drowning in convenience to remember that greatness often begins with saying no. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. As we stand today in an age of algorithms and automation, the tale of America's 1,000-day automotive silence still offers a mirror to our own moment. The factories may look different, and the threats may have changed, but the underlying challenge remains the same. Can a free society catalyze its full potential without waiting for catastrophe to strike? That generation proved it could, transforming gears of comfort into engines of survival, harnessing the power of ordinary citizens for extraordinary missions. They reminded us that the strongest steel comes not only from blast furnaces, but from a people united in purpose. Their story deserves more than retrospection. It deserves replication when the stakes demand it. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So let this story linger, not as a nostalgic feat of industrial might, but as a living lesson in what unified action can accomplish. The absence of new cars during those 1,000 days was not just a symbolic sacrifice, it was the beating heart of a larger effort that turned production lines into lifelines. It stands as a sharp rebuttal to the notion that democracies cannot act decisively, that free peoples are too fragmented to mobilize. When the world teetered on the edge of tyranny, America showed that even comfort could be conscripted into combat. Chrome was traded for courage, horsepower for horsepower of a very different kind. And in that stunning exchange, the nation discovered both its industrial peak and its moral core. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In the end, the 1,000-day halt in car production was not just a chapter in wartime logistics, it was a case study in the elasticity of American will. It showed that when ideology and necessity converge, even the most habitual comforts can be set aside for a cause larger than the individual. Today, as new global challenges loom that require coordination, sacrifice, and adaptability, not only in war, but in crises like climate change or pandemics, the spirit of those factories offers more than nostalgia. It offers a challenge to us all. Are we still capable of such focus, such scale, such self-denial in the name of something bigger? The story of America's silent assembly lines says yes. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. And perhaps that is the final lesson of those 1,000 days. That greatness is not always forged in noise, but in the quiet decisions a country makes to put principle above pleasure. The factories that once polished chrome instead pressed steel. The showrooms that once glittered with promise stood empty but proud. And the workers, engineers, and citizens who endured shortages and hardship did so not for glory, but because they believed their actions could tip the scales of history. In an age overflowing with convenience, we risk forgetting the courage it takes to hit pause, to repurpose what we have for what we need. Yet the silence of those production lines spoke volumes. It told of a nation willing to stop in order to move the world. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. And so we arrive at the true heart of this forgotten chapter in American history, not in rivets or blueprints, but in resolve. The halt in automobile production was never solely about logistics or capacity. It was about choosing principle over profit, redefining what a nation could accomplish when its factories served not demand, but destiny. In those 1,000 carless days, America proved that democratic societies often caricatured as slow or indulgent, could act with staggering speed and clarity when the stakes were high. From factory foremen to frontline soldiers, from housewives to industrial tycoons, a disparate people became a coherent force welded together by shared sacrifice. That unity became our ultimate weapon, and possibly our most fragile treasure. As new battles, moral, environmental, economic, loom on the horizon, we would do well to look not to the shining hoods of returning sedans, but to the emptiness that preceded them and ask, in our time of choice, will we have the courage to pause, to pivot, to become again a nation that builds not only with machines, but with meaning? Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Let history remember those 1,000 days not as a mere footnote or anomaly, but as a masterclass in what determined people can achieve when invention is wed to intention. It was an age that asked ordinary citizens to become extraordinary by trading convenience for consequence, speed for purpose, and comfort for courage. The machinery may have quieted, but the ideals it helped birth continued to echo long after the factories returned to civilian rhythm. In those shuttered showrooms and echoing assembly halls, America discovered one of the most profound truths of its national character, that even the most entrenched habits can bend to necessity when guided by collective will. So the next time the world demands transformation, may we once again look not to what we build, but to what we are willing to stop, sacrifice, and reimagine. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Because when all is said and done, the greatest weapon America wielded during World War II was not a tank, a plane, or a gun, it was its capacity to change. In the stillness of production lines once humming with consumer ambition, the nation found clarity. It found a willingness to choose collective future over present comfort, to align its ingenuity with its ideals. That silence, those 1,000 carless days, became a rare crucible where democracy proved its mettle not through mobilization imposed by decree, but through transformation embraced by choice. It was a moment when America paused, not because it was weak, but because it was ready to be strong in a different way. And in that pause, it reshaped the trajectory of a global war and the very definition of what a modern democracy could achieve. War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. That is why the carless years must be remembered not merely as a historical curiosity, but as a living reminder of what collective purpose can unlock. It was a moment when the gears of production gave way to the gears of principle, when Detroit did not just make war machines, it made history. Those 1,000 days revealed that the true power of a free nation lies not just in its technological edge or its economic muscle, but in its ability to summon unity from complexity and resolve from doubt. In the quiet spaces where engines once echoed, America engineered something far less tangible yet infinitely more enduring: belief. Belief that in times of grave peril, a democracy can choose to act swiftly, strategically, and together. And for that reason, we must never let the silence of those factories fade from memory, because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So, as we remember those 1,000 quiet days, let us not relegate them to sepia-toned memories or patriotism dressed in nostalgia. Let us instead see them for what they truly were: a moment when innovation bowed to discipline, when ambition yielded to urgency, and when the open road was momentarily traded for a higher calling. The shutdown of America's automotive might was not a sign of weakness, but a declaration of strength, of a people willing to recalibrate their entire way of life for the survival of something greater. Detroit's silence was democracy's roar. The factories that ceased to build cars did not stall progress. They redirected it. And in that redirection we find one of the clearest proofs that war, in its most consequential form, is not only waged with weapons but with vision, compromise, and imagination. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Let the final takeaway be unmistakable. The story of America's 1,000 carless days is not just one of sacrifice. It is a strategic symphony of adaptation, resolve, and moral clarity. It is the kind of history that leaves behind more than statistics. It offers a compass for navigating moments of national reckoning. When factories paused for principle and chrome was melted down for cause, the country proved that greatness is not the sum of its consumption, but the strength of its convictions. That silent transformation continues to whisper its challenge to us today. Will we recognize the next great pause not as a loss, but as an opportunity to reforge our identity? Will we have the courage again to believe that what we withhold can be as powerful as what we build? War isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So, let this be our closing reflection. That in a war filled with roaring engines and thunderous exploits, it was the silence of American auto plants that roared loudest of all. It told both enemies and allies that the United States was willing to rewire its daily life for the defense of freedom. Those 1,000 days are more than a footnote, they are a benchmark of what mobilized conviction looks like. They remind us that true victory is not merely the defeat of an adversary, but the demonstration of a people's power to adapt, endure, and rise. From assembly lines that shifted from chrome to combat, to citizens who learned that sacrifice could drive history as surely as horsepower, the lesson is enduring. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In the end, we are left with more than just history, we are left with a challenge. The factories that once stilled their gears for war remind us that even in a free market democracy, collective restraint can be a strategic weapon. The 1,000-day halt in car production did not break America. It tempered it. It didn't stall innovation. It sharpened it. As we face crises that once again demand transformation on a massive scale, from environmental threats to technological disruptions, the echoes from those wartime assembly lines call out again, not with nostalgia, but with urgency. They ask whether we can still trade comfort for cause, routine for resilience, and luxury for legacy. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So let the silence of those 1,000 days continue to echo not as empty space in the timeline of American prosperity, but as a resonant chord in a symphony of principled response. It was a moment when compromise became strength, when delay became determination, and when production lines gave way not just to utility, but to unity. The decision to stop building cars became an act of constructing something far greater, a national identity grounded in purpose over pleasure, in sacrifice over satisfaction. Today, as we face threats both visible and invisible, this legacy doesn't ask us to stop, but to consider why and how we go forward. What are we willing to pause in the name of progress? What comforts can we shelve in favor of collective survival? The answers may well shape the next 1,000 days of our future. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Let the legacy of America's 1,000-day pause stand not just in memory, but in motion, a guiding force for how nations can marshal their resources, reimagine their priorities, and ignite the imagination of free people under duress. True power lies not in ceaseless production, but in the discipline to redirect that power when purpose calls. In a world where challenge is the constant and complacency the foe, those silent production lines show us the blueprint. Pivot with principle, pause with intention, and act with unity. The United States did not halt its auto industry to retreat, it did so to advance a greater cause. In so doing, it forged a legacy not of loss, but of leadership. And as we look beyond the horizon at the mounting trials of our own century, may those 1,000 days remind us of this enduring truth, that even in stillness, a nation can thunder forward. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything. Perhaps that is the real inheritance of America's great carless era, not merely a testament to industrial might or patriotic fervor, but a somber blueprint for conscious transformation. It was an era when steel and sweat met strategy, when sacrifice was measured not just in what was given, but in what was withheld. As we face a century of looming disruptions from climate migration to artificial intelligence, from pandemics to profound political division, the memory of those 1,000 quiet days offers something rare, proof that a democracy can choose urgency over inertia. It reminds us that civilizations are not only advanced by their ability to speed up, but elevated by their willingness to slow down and ask, for whom and for what do we build? Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. And so, the silence that once consumed Detroit's motor plants should not merely echo in corridors of history museums or war documentaries. It should resonate through policy centers, classrooms, and community halls as a strategic memory. Not a nostalgic artifact, but an active precedent. When the gears of prosperity paused, they revealed the deeper machinery of American resolve, a determination not just to outproduce the enemy, but to outimagine them. That pause was a compass for courage, a blueprint for boldness, and above all, a reminder that the measure of a nation lies not only in its capacity to act, but in its willingness to adapt. For in moments of profound uncertainty, it is the choice to redirect the ordinary toward the extraordinary that defines greatness. War isn't just fought with bullets. It's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. Let this final note not be one of silence, but of signal a call to remember that when America halted its automotive heart, it was not freezing time, but bending it toward survival. In that defiant stillness lay a strategy as potent as any army, the collective pause for a just cause. Today, beneath the ever-churning hum of modern life, that echo persists, whispering truths about human capacity, national unity, and adaptive power. The 1,000-day halt was not merely an engineering feat or a patriotic anecdote, it was a declaration that purpose can override profit, that direction matters more than momentum. In this unfinished world of crises and choices, it remains a guiding star for how to respond, not with panic, but with design. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. So let the silence of those 1,000 days endure not as a historical echo, but as a warning chime and a triumphal hymn. It was an age when comfort gave way to courage, and efficiency bowed to ethics. In the hollow of assembly lines no longer humming, America found its clearest voice, not in horsepower or production quotas, but in the bold statement that change is possible when guided by principle. Those 3 years without new cars did not stall a nation, they launched a transformation that would resonate across continents and generations. And though the factories have long since roared back to peacetime rhythm, the wisdom forged in their stillness still waits for the next great challenge, the next great pause, the next great idea. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas. And this one almost changed everything. In the stillness that blanketed Detroit's great factories, a new kind of power was revealed, not one measured in cylinders or sales figures, but in conviction. Those 1,000 days stand not just as the interruption of a product line, but as the fulfillment of a promise, that a free nation, when united by purpose, can redirect its might at will. It is a story for war, yes, but also for peace, a reminder that the most profound changes are sometimes born not in acceleration, but in pause. As new storms brew on the global horizon, let this tale serve as our lodestar, that leadership is not always loud, that courage can be calculated, and that the road to reinvention often begins not with the roar of an engine, but with its silence. Because war isn't just fought with bullets, it's fought with ideas, and this one almost changed everything.